Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. We are going to be talking about an old favorite topic of mine, something that I have written about quite often in the past on digitallydownloaded.net. I'm pretty sure I've done some videos on it as well, though I couldn't figure out which ones. But the topic is game length, and we're going to be talking about it because some news has come to light over the last couple of days regarding Cyberpunk 2077 that has made this discussion relevant all over again. That news is probably best summarized by a Game Informer tweet, which I'll read out right now. So the tweet reads, "One dev has spent over 175 hours in Cyberpunk 2077 and still hasn't completed it. Even better, he said that it's not even him trying to 100% it." So obviously as a game developer, you have to play your own game in order to make sure that it's working properly. And he's not trying to do everything in it, he's just playing it as part of his job, and he's 175 hours into it and still not finished with it. So all those people looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077, and it has been delayed often enough, there is a lot of people out there that are absolutely frothing for it at this point, have a very, very, very long game to look forward to. What I want to use this video to do is to talk about the inherent assumption that we have that a long game is a good game, because that Game Informer tweet, there was two words that really stood out to me, and they were even better, as though without any other context, without knowing what is in those 175 hours, the existence of 175 hours of Cyberpunk 2077 is a self-evidently good thing. And the thing is, the video game industry, video games as an art form, are the only one in which there is such an assumption built in that content, that the amount of time that you spend playing a game is directly related to the quality of that game. Okay, so I know that video games don't compare directly to any other art form because the experience of them is different, and playing a video game is not the same as watching a TV show, which is not the same as reading a book, going to the cinema, going to an art gallery, or taking yourself off to the theatre or the ballet for the night. These things are all very different experiences, and they don't directly compare to one another in terms of how they convey meaning, how they share artistry, and the ideas that they are kind of focused on. That being said, when you take a look at how much time video games take up and compare it to any other art form, the difference is so staggering that it should raise questions in all of us as to whether it's actually healthy for the art form. So to take the ultimate example of a very long book, and the book that people always reach for when they want to name drop something that takes a long time to read, War and Peace. It's not the longest book, but it certainly has the reputation of being one of them. It only takes 40 hours to read through at a standard reading speed for most people. To compare that to Cyberpunk 2077, and if you assume that 175 hours really isn't 100% of the game, so let's increase it up to 200 just for convenience, War and Peace is about 1/5 of Cyberpunk, and that is a massive difference. When you think about the density of War and Peace, all the themes it conveys, the length of the narrative, the fact it is just so overwhelming, and the fact that you can write entire books in analysis of War and Peace, should make you wonder whether the 175 hours in Cyberpunk is used as well as it could be, or it is just really lengthy bloat. So while obviously a video game needs to fit video game bits in and around the narrative, when you have something that is as long as Cyberpunk, creating something that is cohesive, engaging, and is able to convey its themes effectively becomes that much more difficult. It is actually easier to be thematically powerful when you're working with a smaller kind of a smaller length of time, because you can then focus. You can really focus in on that topic and drive home the message that you want to make. And George Orwell, for example, just one of many examples, George Orwell was really effective at doing a lot with very small amounts of words, but really focusing the experience on the message that he wanted to convey. So Animal Farm is a very short book, but it is a very deep, dense, and again, you can write entire books of analysis on Animal Farm. It is so intense because it is so focused and so deliberate, and that is where it gets a lot of its kind of artistic and thematic power out of. When you get to something that is really long, it becomes very unwieldy to then focus messages in, and you start to put additional messages in. All kinds of different topics and things start to float around, and as the player, as the audience, it actually becomes much more difficult to latch onto one thing and focus on it as kind of the core essence of whatever the art form is. And I think what my concern is with Cyberpunk 2077, that is going to be the problem with the game. It is going to have so many balls in the air by the end of it, because it's just run over such a long time, that the message that it wants to get across, its core values, its core themes, those may well get lost in the process. And of course it might not be the case. There may well be the case that Cyberpunk 2077 is a very dense text with a lot of strong themes, and it just hones in on those and delivers those over 175 hours straight. It is entirely possible that will happen. It will not be the first game out there that has managed to be really long and still very thematically strong. I think back to the Trails of Cold Steel series, and I know that's 4 games rather than 1, but it's one linked narrative, and across those 4 games you're looking at 150, 160 hours themselves. And those games actually do justify their length because they do retain the focus on the core values and themes of their narrative throughout. So it is possible, and I'm certainly not suggesting that Cyberpunk 2077 won't be able to justify its length, but it would be on the outside. It would be an outlier if it was able to do that, because most video games, when they get very long, they lose their narrative focus, and that's just a reality. There's so many big AAA blockbusters that just they end up feeling very bloated and padded and exhausting to play, because there is that pressure to make them long. Why does that pressure exist? I think it is as simple as the fact that we look at video games as products and not artwork. One of the most common terms you hear over and over and over again in video games, in the discussion about video games, is value for money. You get good value for money from sales. You get good value for money when the game is really long. You exchange $100 for Cyberpunk 2077, you get 200 hours of gameplay back. That's a really good ratio of the number of hours played for the cost, and that therefore is value for money. But value for money is almost the polar opposite of what we should be talking about if we're talking about art. And in any other art form, you don't really talk about value for money. Nobody talks about War and Peace as being good value for money because it's longer than Animal Farm. It's not something we don't try to break a book down in terms of its quality by the number of pages we have to turn to get to the end of it. The same with cinema. Value for money, people do talk about value for money in the sense that nobody wants to spend $30 to stream a Disney movie on a service that they're already paying for, but that's a little bit different to the inherent quality of a film is kind of divorced from the money that you spend on it, and people don't really bat an eyelid, for example, to go to the cinema for a 90-minute movie as opposed to a 3-hour movie. It doesn't really factor into their consideration. Nobody went to the Avengers and assumed that it was the best film of the year because it was the longest film of the year. There still was real value for a film like Lighthouse, which was about 90 minutes long. So we don't have that same expectation even in film, and certainly cinema is probably the second most productized art form out there. And when we get to the kind of the higher art forms as such, nobody considers value for money in buying ballet tickets or the going to the theatre. And certainly if you're in the market for buying paintings and stuff, you're not looking to get the cheapest Picasso. You're looking to get the Picasso that you want. Or if you're a collector, you're looking to get a couple of Picassos so you can then send them on. There's still a commercial element to that. But the quality of the artwork is not really tied up to how much value it provides you. The value in different art forms is more with regards to the messages that they share, the passion that you have for that art form, and so on. And I feel like video games has lost sight of that. When we talk about video games, one of the questions that always comes up, particularly with the AAA side of things, is just how long it's going to be. How big is the world going to be? How much content are you going to get out of it? And A big part of the problem, of course, is that the video game industry is run by suit people who have never done an arts degree in their life, but certainly understand how to market product. And the consumers kind of just to go along with this because they are consumers. You know, they don't really look at video games as something to study, to value as art. They look at it as something to entertain them after a busy day. And I'm certainly not suggesting that those people who just want to see video games as a form of entertainment are wrong. And if 175 hours in Cyberpunk 2077 gives you good value for money, then that's great. But, you know, we do continue to push the message that video games are an art form worthy of respect in their own right as art forms. And yes, we do then turn around and act like 175 hours of whatever doesn't have to matter. It doesn't matter what's in it. It's just the fact that it's 175 hours is as good as, you know, is good value for money. It's a good product. It's a better thing than something that only offers 1 hour, even if that 1 hour is absolutely amazing. So these are kind of off the top of my head thoughts, because I haven't written a script for this video, but it is a topic that means a lot to me. I feel like if we are going to get to the point where video games are respected as art forms, we need to shift the conversation, and all the conversations we have, this is just one of them, but there's quite a few different areas. We need to shift the conversation away from what defines video games as products to what defines them as artworks. And if I was given the opportunity to interview somebody at Cyberpunk 2077, CD Projekt Red, working on Cyberpunk 2077, I would not be asking them, how many hours do you get out of this video game? How far are you into this video game? I would not be asking them those kinds of questions. I would be asking them, how are you delivering a powerful cyberpunk game? Because cyberpunk is a genre which has a particularly strong resonance in terms of its themes, especially in the literature world, also cinema. You know, in the other art forms, cyberpunk means something very potent, and I've been following this game quite a lot, and one of the things I don't really see is people talking about cyberpunk as cyberpunk. There seems to be this assumption that it's going to be a good cyberpunk thing, but nobody's actually talking about that. Everybody's talking about how long it is instead. So anyway, that's enough for this video. Let me know your own thoughts in the comments. I know there are a lot of people that enjoy long games, and good for them. Once again, I'm not criticizing you if that's what you're looking for in a video game. I'm just saying if you want to participate in video games as an art form discussion, then talking about their length doesn't really help that matter. But let me know your own thoughts in the comments. Please do click that like and subscribe button if you enjoy my videos. That way you won't miss any. And please do consider backing me on Patreon. $1 a month is enough. That's what you can back me from, as little as that. And that support will really help me to continue to grow my channel, and perhaps even find some time to write scripts before I sit down to do these videos. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you at the next one. Have a great week.